Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of the Webhead Legion podcast. I am your host, Jesse Brown, and I have with me the marvelous Mike McNulty and tremendous Tom Metz. Say hello, guys.
Hey.
Hey.
On today's show, we're going to be talking about Superior Spider-Man 3 through 5 and everything in between, as well as our thoughts on the casting of the upcoming Amazing Spider-Man 2 movie. Let's start by covering Superior Spider-Man number 3. Tom, what are your thoughts on the Vulture arc?
I thought it was really good. I think it's like one of the first issue of Superior Spider-Man that could legitimately be on best of lists in a few years, like unrelated to the rest of the arc.
Right.
But I really liked it.
Great, good. And the artwork and everything, enjoyed that?
Yeah.
Mike, what did you think about the arc?
I was okay. The thing is, I actually thought that by that point, that issue 3 was probably the best one thus far, from issue 1 to 3.
Right on.
The first two issues I had some very, I'm like, very kind of like, I was very kind of mixed feelings out. But when I got to 3, I thought, oh, this is actually good because we're finally getting some insight into Dr. Octopus as a character.
Right, yeah.
And I thought that was some very significant. We really got to see kind of a lot of his motivation there, especially where we knew where he was coming from. We kind of saw his connection with the Vulture and like how he has his partnership, and also the fact that there was and also going back into his childhood and why he reacted the way he did when he found out who the Vulture's gang comprised of.
Sure.
And I know some people were thinking, well, wait a minute, what about the ends of the earth thing where he threatened to blow? Wouldn't children be involved in that thing? But I think it's in the context of this issue, it came out really strong, and you really kind of understood where he was, where Doc Ock was coming from. That there was kind of a sense about him, that there was some things like you understood why about his character and everything like this too. So I think it was the strongest issue.
Yeah, I agree. It had really good characterization for Doc Ock as Spider-Man, and I even though I'm not a fan of the Vulture, I thought it was a pretty good story. The way Ock and Vulture related to each other or interacted.
Also, the fact that the way he's trying to deal with the Vulture is the fact that he tried to give him money to basically leave town.
Yeah, $50 million. Where did he come up with that so quick?
It's like, oh, that's it's like, hey, that's a great. It's kind of a nice little shows a lot of how this Spider-Man would how do things too. So I thought that was a nice little touch there.
Wow, what did you think about that, Tom? $50 million to stop crime? Would Spider-Man have followed through with that?
Well, this Spider-Man would. I think the other Spider-Man, like regular Peter Parker, doesn't have access to that.
Yeah.
Well, he would. Well, I don't know how much money he would have now from his Horizon Labs job. Because
probably not $50 million.
Nowhere near 50
probably
million.
Not. But I mean, he's it's not like he's a pauper anymore, so it's not.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
I think the Spider-Man Iron Man team up.
Absolutely.
Like a villain just bribed to give up the life.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't shown that or had an issue for that in Avenging yet.
Avenging's almost a different beast too. I mean, it's kind of like because especially since you don't have Peter Parker acting as Obi-Wan Kenobi in that story. So.
Oh yeah, that's true. I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that's why some people side with Avenging over Superior.
Yeah.
I'm leaning more towards Avenging nowadays, but Superior's getting better.
Yeah.
What did you, Tom? What did you think about this spider signal?
I don't know. That was like a clever opening.
Pretty funny. It was a nice little parody.
Yeah.
It got people riled up, thinking that it was going to be a permanent feature. And
Well, at first people were pissed off that it was going to be a permanent, like they thought it was going to be a permanent feature.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, they're ripping off Batman. Then, like, 2 pages into the story, they're like, oh my god, how dare they insult the Batman comics?
Right.
Well, I mean, that's the thing too. I mean, it was that's the part of the thing where I actually like that because the fact that and when you're reading that part, you're thinking, oh, yeah, that's kind of true about the bat signal and everything like this. Even though I know there's more to it than if anyone's read the Batman comics.
Sure.
At the same time, it's like, yeah, well, that's actually kind of a good, like, nice little jab thing. And also, it's not Marvel jabs at DC all the time.
Yeah, I felt it was a fair tribute.
Yeah.
It wasn't in bad taste.
No, no, not at all. I mean, especially since Dan Slott, I think, has written for Batman comics before in the past, I believe.
Oh, he has.
Yeah,
Really?
he did a thing.
Yeah, he did the
Go ahead.
Arkham Asylum miniseries.
Oh, wow.
Not the Grant Morrison one, but the other one. There was another.
The one based on the video games?
No. It was actually
no, it wasn't based on video games.
Oh, okay.
It was like some crook decided to plead, do an insanity plea, and was sent to Arkham Asylum. And basically, it's like his point of view as he essentially becomes a supervillain. He also meets several other Batman bad guys.
Oh, right. Obviously, it wouldn't be based on the games because at the timeline for that, Dan Slott was the writer of Spider-Man working for Marvel. So yeah, I guess that was quite a few years back. Let's see. Oh, Mike, I wanted to ask you: is Ghost Peter a bad plot device at this point?
I personally don't mind him too much.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand why people are annoyed by him.
Sure.
Because they kind of want to see. I think a lot of people want to kind of look through Doc Ock's perspective as Spider-Man solely. But with Ghost Peter around, it kind of gives people the difference. Oh, this is not really a story about Doc Ock anymore. This is how long until Peter gets his body back, kind of thing. It kind of telegraphs it too much, I think, about it. But there is something about Ghost Peter that probably we'll get into later when we talk about the other issues, which I think is maybe overlooking about him. But yeah, I kind of think I can see people's point why Ghost Peter is kind of a little bit a little annoying Jiminy Cricket type.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel that way. I felt that way in issue 2 mostly. I think that was the worst for me.
Yeah, it was. It got pretty excessive there, and issue 2 had all kinds of problems, in my opinion.
Okay, moving on a little bit. Tom, is Doc Ock's ego starting to get the best of him?
I think it was always starting to get the best of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, the end of issue 5 especially, that was a weird moment just because I didn't see something like that happening that early in the series.
Mm-hmm.
So the stuff he does at the end of the Massacre arc, I was kind of surprised that this would happen this early in the series, as opposed to 20 issues in right before the highly promoted return of Peter Parker.
Let's talk about issues 4 and 5. We have Massacre, a villain specifically created by Dan Slott, from the No One Dies arc. I think it was issue 655, and
655, 656.
Right, where so he gets put in jail by Peter Parker, and then in this series he breaks out and goes back to his killing ways. We see that he has killed Ashley Kafka, a character that debuted in Spectacular from 1991. So she got killed off, and Peter Parker wasn't too happy about that, obviously. Any retrospect on Ashley Kafka, the character?
I kind of thought she could have, if you were going to kill her off, she should have had a better send-off.
Mm-hmm.
Because, especially if anyone has kind of read a lot of the early, a lot of the issues that she was in, especially the JMD Mateus issues and stuff like that, and can kind of see that she was kind of had a very, that she was a very I think she was kind of an interesting character, and and I know some people think about it when they look at terms of Ravencroft as kind of it's just basically Spider-Man's version of Arkham Asylum thing.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of...
It kind of is.
Yeah, it pretty much is. I mean, especially if you got Carnage in there and stuff. But I think in terms of her as a character, I think that the thing is that she's supposed to be kind of a person who kind of almost in a sense kind of a lot more tries to rebuild, unlike Arkham, the characters in there, it's she's trying to be more rehabilitative and everything.
Yeah.
And the way she went out in here, it just seemed more just a death for death's sake kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why you have to have some kind of motive in order to propel the story.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think this lot could have had maybe a better send off with maybe if he was going to kill her off, then they should have had a better send-off for the character. Because I know she wasn't in the comics for a very long time, and then to just bring her back and just to have her be shot and killed, basically, it just seemed like, that's kind of,
Yeah, no, I agree. A lot of the reviews I've read complained about that.
Would there have been a better way to kill her off, though? Basically, the story does require several things to happen.
Right.
That, killing her off during Massacre's escape is, the most logical place to do it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Would there have been another way to do that?
Well, I mean, I agree that I'm thinking that maybe that she could have had a little bit more of a build-up. I think if she appeared in earlier in Dan Slott's run, it wouldn't have been so, in some capacity.
True. Yeah.
But I think but here it's just almost like, oh, we're just going to bring her in, and then, bam, and it's like, but
right.
I'm not against the idea of having her necessarily. Because it sort of does. You're right. It does serve a story purpose.
Yeah. Well, Massacre needed to kill somebody from Ravencroft, so I guess she was a natural choice.
Right.
And noble death, you could have had a more dramatic death scene, but that might not fit that beat of the story.
True.
That would have to be towards the end of the story or something, as opposed to towards the beginning.
You wouldn't want to overshadow what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe he'll make references to it and do some tributes to her in the next issues, hopefully.
Yeah.
But, okay, so we have Massacre who's broken out, and he's basically attempt to bribe a CEO of a cola company to attack his competitor's brand by doing bad publicity and wearing the T-shirt of the opposing brand while killing people. How do you feel about that storyline, Tom?
It's I don't know. I think it fits a character whose superpower is basically amorality.
Uh-huh.
A willingness to be more violent than everyone else. So, it's the type of insane plot you'd expect from a serial killer.
True.
I was actually kind of thinking, if that was probably somebody that it was that the Joker came up with that, I probably would have bought it a little bit more. But for some reason, it came out to me. It came off, oh, this is a little ridiculous kind of thing. But it just seemed a little bit. I know it's supposed to be a stab at Slott's making it kind of like corporate America kind of thing, but and consumerism. But it seemed a little bit. Oh, that's I thought it was odd, but Massacre is kind of a nut job.
Right.
But I can see that if you think that it doesn't really fit the character as he was earlier shown as basically actually having a motive, even if it was just to feel some emotion.
Right.
Even if this has nothing to do with that master plan.
Yeah, it's just more because Massacre's character is basically I'm just it's basically just kind of like an emotionless killing machine, and who does things necessarily without motive necessarily, and this kind of gave him, I'm just doing this for money kind of.
Yeah.
You can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Spider-Puss decides to take matters into his own hands and deal with the villain head on, and actually decides to shoot him and apparently end his life. Predictions on that? Did Spider-Man actually kill him, and did he do it on purpose?
Well, here's the thing about that. I think now there's some people who are saying that Doc Ock maybe didn't do it, that maybe there's going to be kind of a swerve.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my thing. I hope there isn't. I actually think that probably the story would be served better if Doc Ock did kill Massacre.
Right.
Because, and I think it kind of goes, because if you think about how the story has been played out, it kind of goes back to something that I think we could start seeing about Doc Ock almost from the beginning, almost from the first panel when the story started, like the Massacre storyline.
Sure.
And that is when you see Doc Ock on the rooftop with his spider bots, and he's talking about how how it's he's got about 8,000. He's got that my spider bots give me 8,000 eyes, and I'm going to watch over the city of New York and everything.
Yeah.
And also, I kind of think I have an idea maybe where Slott may be going with this, and it kind of seemed to be confirmed when Doc Ock did kill Massacre, or I'm assuming he did, and that is that Doc Ock has now kind of basically now believes that because based on what Peter instilled in him about with great power comes great responsibility, that Doc Ock now believes that he has the moral authority to be above the law and to basically act to impose his will on others.
Mm-hmm.
Believe that it's for his own good, for their own good, and to act as judge, jury, and executioner as he sees fit.
Right. At the end of the issue, the quote that he gave, that's evidence that he does feel that way, where he was talking about he was going to judge us all.
Right. Yeah. And I think in a way, it's kind of like, to me, it's almost seemed like, and I kind of think, because the thing is, when we oftentimes think of, in terms of Spider-Man, when we think of the phrase, with great power comes great responsibility, we often think of that in terms of, something more altruistic. I mean, especially in Peter's case, because it's like, because we think of it as, that's a call to basically act as kind of for stewardship, or to kind of help to serve other people, and to use our time, and not time, but our talents and our gifts for the benefit of others, to help people.
Right.
But Doc Ock, he sees that as a means of, it's almost like that phrase can also be twisted by the tyrant or the fascist or the potential dictator to basically believe that I have the moral authority to impose my will on others for their own good, or quote unquote or what I assume will be their own good. And that's how Doc Ock, because Doc Ock, he's all about control. He's all about trying to impose his will on things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like, and if you kind of divide up the phrase power and responsibility, Peter was all about the responsibility. Doc Ock is all about the power.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
And in a way, I think that the way the thing is going, the way the thing is heading towards, especially if Massacre is dead and stuff, is that Doc Ock is systematically turning New York City into his own police state.
Right.
And
martial
everybody
law
so far is going along with it, because especially Jonah, who's basically, at the end of the thing, when this thing goes south, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting impeached as mayor, because he's basically openly declared that, I'm all for vigilante murder, basically, on live TV, on television. So I think it's kind of it gives an interesting angle there. If it turns out that Massacre isn't dead or something like that, I think it kind of diminishes the impact that the issue 5 had.
Uh-huh.
And, but...
Well, Thomas, what's your prediction on Doc Ock or Spider-Puss killing Massacre, yes or no?
I'm pretty sure Massacre's dead. It's kind of weird that there were some complaints that someone was complaining on CBR that after the 3rd issue that, oh my God, Spider-Man killed the Vulture, and in that issue it seemed pretty clear that no, the Vulture was seriously injured but not killed.
Yeah, he did give him a pretty hard beating.
Questions like, did Spider-Man kill Massacre? I'm pretty sure he did.
Mm-hmm.
If the entire point of the scene is Spider-Man holds a gun to Massacre's head. Then Massacre has the brief moment oh my God, I feel emotion.
Yes.
Spider-Man pulls the trigger. It's pretty clear that Spider-Man shot him.
Right. If he didn't,
and Jonah's really happy, and everyone's saying that that what happened, Spider-Man was a hero, so.
Yeah, I think if Massacre
got killed.
If Massacre wasn't showing any emotion, then it would be more kind of open-ended whether or not Spider-Puss actually did kill him or not. So the fact that he showed emotion leads me to believe that, yes, Spider-Man actually did kill him, which is going to have...
Also, the Massacre showed emotion, and it didn't change Spider-Man's mind, or
right.
Spider-Puss's mind.
Exactly, yep.
And,
are we going with Spider-Puss or Spock or what?
I like to go with Spider-Puss.
I think it's going back to what you said, Jesse, about how he says, where he's pointing the gun and says, and Ghost Peter tries to convince Cell to stop Doc Ock, and then Doc Ock goes, this changes nothing. You are who you are. That killer will always be hiding inside you. There's only,
Yeah.
And of course, that's deliberately ironic because, Doc Ock, it's essentially almost like kind of saying that even that Doc Ock, even though that can apply to Doc Ock himself, because he's still, even though he's quote unquote a superhero now,
right?
It's still Doc Ock. It's still the same guy.
It's interesting because in the first issue, Ock was going to do the same thing. He was going to kill the villains, and then Ghost Peter comes out and kind of stops him. But this time that doesn't happen. So my question is, do you think Ock is somehow gaining more control over Ghost Peter and his influence over him?
Because it's more, because I mean, if you, maybe that's kind of indicated because in the panel before that, when Doc Ock says that thing about being the kill, before he shoots him, and you see the image of Ghost Peter next to him, and he's more like wispy. He's not very put solid and stuff. So maybe that should be the case. Like maybe he's not. Maybe while Doc Ock is kind of slightly hearing him more, Ghost Peter's kind of losing
influence, losing power. Yeah.
Yeah, more of a physical. He's losing more physical, control over his body as opposed to.
Sure.
He's getting more wrapped up in his mind or something.
Yeah.
We still don't really know what Ghost Peter is, but.
I don't think it's really a controlled thing. Like in the first issue, it wasn't premeditated. Like he was just like beating the guy, and then like realized like, oh, this is what I'm doing. Like that he's going too far, and then like police also told him like good work, Walker. We've got it from here. So
right.
Like it's different when like it's just like he's like I guess losing control a little bit as opposed to doing something premeditated. Like I'm going to shoot this guy. I just shot this guy. Like
plus you're not exactly going to stop. How are you going to exactly stop a bullet?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a quick question, guys. Which do you prefer, Mocha-Cola or Fizzy-Cola?
What do you mean?
Mocha-Cola, definitely.
Mocha-Cola? Cool. I think I'm more of a Mocha-Cola type of guy. It sounds better.
Well, yeah. Is it Mocha? Oh.
The logo.
Well, yeah, because the logo is definitely, it looks very familiar.
Oh, yes. Classic. All right. So, well, I guess at this point we can start talking about the casting choices for Amazing Spider-Man 2 movie. They've announced that Chris Cooper is going to be playing Norman Osborn. And they've also casted Mary Jane and Harry Osborn. Very interesting. Paul Giamatti as the Rhino, which came after we learned that Jamie Foxx will be playing Electro. So, I guess my question is, well, guys, I mean, go ahead, feel free to get your thoughts out there on that.
Well, I think Chris Cooper as Norman Osborn was a stroke of genius in terms of casting.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because if you've ever seen some of his other films and everything, because, I mean, the thing is, especially if they're going for Norman Osborn as sort of like kind of the businessman type, the corrupt businessman who kind of like controls things behind the scenes more so, because Chris Cooper's kind of the way his acting style is a lot more understated in terms of his performance and everything, but you still get that because you still get kind of convey what his emotions and feelings are and stuff. I mean. He's played villains before. Like if you've ever seen American Beauty, where he actually plays an abusive dad in that film.
Oh yes, I did see that. Yeah.
And then you've got also there's a movie called Breach where he plays I think it was Robert Hansen or something like that. But he can play someone who is mentally unhinged, but it's not over the top.
I was worried if he's going to be intimidating enough for a Norman.
Oh, he can be. Yeah, he can pull it. I mean, based on some of the stuff I've seen him do, some of the earlier work films I've seen him in, right. He can pull that off. He can definitely pull off the idea that this guy is just kind of a more of an intimidating presence type, without being kind of like without doing the kind of what William Dafoe did, which was kind of more, very
psycho.
With that,
a psychological bully. Yeah.
I think he could do a very good job with it.
How about being kind of a father figure to Peter? I mean, do you think they'll go with that route with his character?
Well, I don't see why they wouldn't, because that to me I think would be kind of a crucial element.
Yeah, it seems like a given.
Yeah, I mean it has to have that, because it has to have that kind of that conflict. It has to have that kind of in there with the fact that he kind of sees Peter as the son that he would have liked to have had, especially if they're taking more of their cues from the Ultimate Spider-Man,
which they are,
comic, where he kind of sees Peter as kind of like especially if he knows like Peter is Spider-Man from the very get-go somehow.
Tom, do you like Paul Giamatti as Rhino?
I'm a little conflicted on it. That Giamatti's been on like interviews for years saying he really wants to play that role.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably
Really?
something that like he's excited about. But like he can play intimidating, but usually in a smart way.
Yeah.
He's intimidating it as a CEO or like maybe a psychotic killer, not as someone who's supposed to be strong and dumb.
Yeah, like a big
Like, or
thug.
at least in the comics. So that one worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going for with casting him. That seems very odd to me.
Well, here's the
I think
thing.
it was like a major actor said he wants to play the role, so that was probably like what got him in there.
Yeah, so he's got to have
What got
something
him
in
the audition
mind.
at least.
Right, he's got to have like a motivation in mind already.
Well, here's the other
Yeah.
question: is do you think it's going to be? Is it going to like has it portray the Rhino? Do you think it's going to be some kind of armor? It's like kind of like this Iron Man battle suit type.
Yeah.
thing.
I don't know the
Either
differences between Ultimate Rhino and regular Rhino.
Well, Rhino in the comics is he's like they kind of did some kind of experimentation to make him stronger, and they put him in kind of like a special thing.
Like a scorpion, like the scorpion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Rhino's like an acronym for something, but
Oh.
I can't imagine Paul Giamatti.
Well, he's got to play a Russian Lesky.
I can see him pull a Russian accent off, but
Yeah.
I can't see. I'm trying to think. Like I don't know how they.
Yeah.
I cannot see him doing the the mainstream portraying a mainstream Rhino. I can more see like a battle suit type thing rather than you know.
I'm really
Unless
struggling
they
with.
put a CGI face on him or something, like if they do like basically do a CGI face deal with him or something.
Yeah, I'm really struggling with accepting him as the Rhino. I mean, he's a really good actor. I like his work. To me, he just doesn't seem like Rhino. But I have the 90s cartoon Spider-Man Rhino ground into my head with like a Jersey accent. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not crazy about who they casted as Mary Jane. Well, I haven't really seen her acting that much.
Yeah.
For me, it's kind of like a wild
Given
card.
her like a good actress in The Descendants, but yeah, like I haven't really seen her elsewhere.
I haven't even seen any stuff that she's in either.
I mean, not against, but alongside Emma Stone, who's a really great actress.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm afraid like she's just gonna get lost in the shuffle, kind of. Mary Jane, I guess her role in this would be Harry Osborn's girlfriend and kind of like a confidant to Peter.
Well, they could, or it's more like that she could be the potential spoiler between Peter and Gwen. And also the fact, I think, that some of the images showing her that she's kind of on the motorcycle and stuff.
Huh.
So maybe they're going for like, that she's kind of like,
The tomboy?
Maybe she's going to have the personality that Ultimate Gwen Stacy does. Like they do.
I can see them going to like a tomboy route and then having a like later moment when she cleans herself up and like has the like jackpot scene.
Yeah. With Mark Webb saying that how in the first movie they kind of saw Peter Parker more kind of like more of a punk as opposed to a nerd. That maybe Mary Jane appeals that more toward that punkish side as opposed to, whereas Gwen Stacy appeals to his more nerdy side.
We'll just have to wait and see. It'll be interesting. We have Dane DeHaan, I guess that's how you say his name, as Harry Osborn. I have not seen any of his acting. So
have you ever seen Chronicle?
Chronicle, yeah, I did see that. He's the kid that went over the top that they tried
Once
to...
the kid goes over the top, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That was cool.
Yeah, which I think I can see that easy. I just, hopefully this is not something like he gets typecast into all the time, like a guy who seems like a nerd, kind of like the nerdy outcast who ends up going full supervillain thing, but...
Yeah.
I think he could, it's essentially he would be kind of... he's almost maybe playing a similar role in here that he did in that movie.
Right.
Minus having the telepathic superpowers, but...
Mm-hmm.
Presumably he'll be a little less pathetic, like in the beginning, like when he's first introduced, or like before he gets powers. But.
Right. Yeah. He's going to be the rich. He's
the rich
going to be the rich kid, right?
Which would also kind of make him the popular kid, to some degree. A lot of possibilities, a lot of good possibilities for interesting storylines.
I think my main concern with all the roles in the sequel that if you look at the best superhero sequels, like they usually involve a big villain. Like Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2 was Zod in Superman 2.
Yeah.
With this one, they're saving the big villain for the third one. Or at least that's the impression I have, that like Chris Cooper is going to be like probably introduced in Amazing Spider-Man 2, but he won't be the Green Goblin until the third one.
Yeah.
So I don't know if like the Rhino and Vulture could be like the like how good a film with just them as the villains could be.
Yeah, because I mean, mainly I think in terms of, because it does seem like they are kind of saving, like I agree that they are kind of saving Green Goblin for the third one if they're going to be, because I do not see how they are going to fit, you know, because you can't have all three, you know, it's a precarious balancing act to try to put multiple villains in a film and try to give them all equal weight.
And there's also rumors circulating about Venom debuting in this because
I don't know about
with the tweets from Mark Webb and the locker with the number on it that referred to the issue of Ultimate Spider-Man where Venom debuted. So.
Well, maybe
I
that's...
would initially get the...
Go ahead, Tom.
Like, before the announcers came out, I thought that the film would have Ultimate Venom as the bad guy. But now it seems to be, like, two new villains, which I can understand why. That if Spider-Man 3 came out, like, 7 years ago, or 7 years before Amazing Spider-Man 2 comes out, they're going to want completely new villains, especially if the Green Goblin's going to be in Amazing Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, plus the thing with the idea with the Venom thing, that to me, they're going to keep exploring the whole Peter Parker's parents angle, obviously, you know, because in the Ultimate Comics, you know, it's Peter's dad who created the Venom symbiote.
Yeah, right on.
And so it seems like to me that could be an extension of where this could be, you know, like they're trying to tie that whole angle thing. I mean, which would be kind of odd because in the first movie they really kind of downplayed that the whole the mystery about the parents. Even though the film's marketing for that movie, they was like, oh, that's the untold story and everything.
It'll be interesting to see how they can work Electro and Rhino into the same plot. I don't know where that's coming from, but good luck with that.
Well, Electro, from the sound of it, is obviously it's a very different character. It sounds like he's almost like kind of like a worker at the Oscorp, and he kind of semi-befriends Peter, and then it's, you know, and it's kind of like you get the impression that it's one of those things where he kind of like becomes almost like the ultimate disgruntled employee.
Well, we don't even know for sure that Electro is being portrayed as the main villain, and then like Rhino's like a sub-villain. They could be working together, or the Rhino could be the main villain. I mean, we have no idea, really.
But also, that narrative with Electro would require someone for Spider-Man to fight before Max Dillon gets powers.
Yeah.
Like, that would make sense, like, for the Rhino.
Yeah.
It would also give Peter an excuse to, like, investigate Oscorp if there's suddenly a supervillain connected to it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, the Rhino's the first, like, he's the first guy, and then he gets defeated, and then, of course, then you have Electro come in as kind of the bane, of course, becomes the big bad, and then, of course, have a thing where, you know, because the easy route to go here is have Electro attack Oscorp, and then Spider-Man's has to save Norman Osborn's life or something.
Getting back to the comics real briefly, I just wanted to ask, it's been 3 months into the Ock as Spider-Man story. How do you feel now compared to after reading 700 about Doc Ock being Spider-Man? I'll let you start, Tom.
I think the scene that reassured me the most was when Ghost Peter popped up in issue 1, which at least meant they weren't going to play the question of, like, is Peter alive, like, which most fans would expect the answer to be yes, he's still alive in some way. Mm-hmm. But they weren't really playing around with that question, and I think it's more satisfying when it's like, what's going to happen next, as opposed to, will the main character return?
Right.
So, I don't know, like, it's right now a lot of fun, but it's, like, also, it's good to have the reassurance that the main character, that the best character in comics is still around.
Okay, so you're saying, like, without that reassurance, you wouldn't be on board with this?
Not as much.
Yeah, my thoughts about it, I kind of...
Compared to, how do you feel about him as Spider-Man right now, compared to how you felt about it after reading 700?
Well, right now, I kind of think, now that I kind of have an inkling of what I think with terms of Doc Ock, I think he's using this as an opportunity to try to basically kind of seize, you know, control and power and everything, you know, because, I mean, I kind of like the idea that Doc Ock, even though he thinks of himself now as a superhero, he's still kind of the same old Doc Ock, that was one of the concerns is because I think as we spoke, like I said last time, at the end of 700, I kind of thought, that he just magically learned with great power, great responsibility, and he's like, suddenly I'm a good guy now, or something. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. And you especially get that in Avenging Spider-Man 2, especially if you see the end of the last issue where he basically captured the Sandman. I do think it's kind of interesting. And so, of course, the suspense is kind of thinking, how is Doc Ock going to be stopped? And then also the other question is, well, would you necessarily want to stop him? Because it seems like the way it's portrayed, he's doing a very effective job. I was kind of wondering, how is Dan Slott going to maintain this? Because how are people going to be relate to this?
Right.
But I think the fascination is, of course, how is he going to screw up, and how is he going, and how far is he going to go? And I think that's kind of and the other thing too is about, as annoying as Ghost Peter is, technically he's the only thing that's right now is keeping Doc Ock in check. Mm-hmm. And what happens if he goes?
Sure.
Because there's going to be a point where I think he's going to, he's not going to be in the picture.
It seems like from teaser images of future covers that Ock is going to search for a way to remove Peter altogether from his brain.
Yeah, he finds out that Peter's there, and then of course he takes him out. Basically tells him, like, you were the one who taught me with great power comes great responsibility, and in order to effectively do that, you are holding me back, and so I must remove you. I'm thinking he gets excised, and maybe that's going to be whatever happens to Ghost. Maybe what happens to Peter after that point is like maybe he winds up in the body of living brain. I think some people have suggested that. That his Ghost Peter stuck in the body of the living brain, and he's like,
Yeah.
Which
I initially, after 700, I had thoughts that, well, not after 700, but right before it, I was thinking maybe Peter transfers his mind to several different bodies, and we get a series of that. Yeah.
Especially I kind of figured that he might have been still around, like acting like a Doc Ock acting as a Constantine. I just did not expect him to be pulling the Obi-Wan Kenobi Force Ghost bit.
Well, that about does it. Do you guys have any final thoughts? Anything you want to add?
I have a question though. How long do you guys think the Ock of Spider-Man thing is gonna last?
I think until the movie hits.
Well, if this is if Dan Slott's saying that he has this, apparently the earlier interviews, he said that he's had like a year's worth of stories planned out for Superior Spider-Man. I almost kind of see issue 25 as kind of like the perfect send-off.
Yeah, 12 and a half months.
Yeah. At the pace this is going, it could burn out very, it seems like it could burn out very quickly. I mean,
I disagree. I don't see the end in sight yet.
My big quibbles with this thing is the fact that at some point, somebody's got to figure out, is like, how can people not see that this guy is,
Right.
especially because the longer this kind of goes on with Doc Ock as Spider-Man, and nobody's really kind of figuring out, that it's not Peter.
Yeah, well, eventually he's going to work Carly into that whole equation.
Well, Carly, I think, already knows.
Yeah, but he hasn't really been able to develop that or follow up on it yet.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing I was kind of thinking, with Carly, like how, if she does know, and I think there's strong indications she does, you'd think that she would have told Mary Jane at some point.
Yeah, and then we're also going to have the Green Goblin arc, obviously.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Which will be pretty big.
I mean, but I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think
one.
Issue 25 would be...
won't be high on tranquilizers.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I think issue 25 is a nice round number to go out on. Bring Peter back at that point.
Yeah.
I was thinking it would be about 30 issues, but now with Spider-Man spying on CEOs and the solicitations for 8 and 9, I'm wondering if it may even be a lot faster than that.
Oh, I have an interesting idea here. I'm interested to know, once Spider-Puss crosses the line and goes too far, it's obviously going to reflect poorly on Jameson, who's so heavily supporting this character. Do you think this will lead to Jameson losing authority or being looked down upon as the mayor? Kind of a reshuffling of his role in the comics?
I think that's a plausible way to go. I mean, I think there's going to be, depending on where Dan Slott's heading with this, I think it could be a point where Jonah ends up being the last person to figure out what's really going on.
Yeah.
And by that point, it's way too late.
Yeah.
I think Jonah's going to stick around as the mayor just because we don't know what's going to happen to the newspaper industry in 20 years. We could all be reasonably certain that New York City is going to have a mayor.
Good point.
He has too much job security right now.
Well, that about wraps things up for this episode of the Webhead Legion podcast. I thank you all for joining me.
You're welcome.
Don't forget to visit us on Facebook and also SpidermanReviews.com. And always remember, with great power comes great responsibility.